point here. I'm going to talk about what I expect, and then we're going to go and look at the root. Okay, for this, it's on Teams if you want. Please, if you're handing this to me, I do not read well off the computer, so I will want this typed up or handwritten. I don't care either one. And then you will submit it through the assignment box. You want to know how to submit an assignment, or do you want me to go through that first? Okay, right, yes. Out here is a box. Now, the bottom of the box, I'm the only person who's got the key to Now, the reason that I do the box is because every time you put in this, Elliot takes it off, she kicks you off. Don't give it to me. Because if you give it to me, then you're going to find yourself on the OT work list, and you're going to say, well, I've already done that. So to avoid that situation entirely, we have this box. Now you'll notice it's got name, so you put your name, you put your class. The name of the assessment is the Magnesium report, submitted by, well, it'll be attached. You don't really need to worry about that. My name and data submission report. What you do is you grab a stapler. There's one actually chained to the bench there because kids always steal it. We'll find the stapler and staple that to the front of your Magnesium report, and then you put it in through the box. Now the reason this is because at university that's how you submit it. At time that's how you submit it. So just kind of getting you ready for more advanced school. The other thing is that we don't hand this assignment in what can go down. So really, it's important that you mark this in together. We don't want to send a letter home that says you haven't done the Magnesium report, but you have, but you walked in one day and just like threw it on the desk. No one's over here, you could go, yeah, he'll find that. Well, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Okay, so basically, if you print it out, stick it in. If you run out of printer balance, tell me, I'll print it. Alright? But that's how we want you to submit, and it just means there's no mistake. Okay, so in your Magnesium report, you should have these things. A clear title. Now, you can either look at this PowerPoint later or put it on Canvas, or you can write these things down. Either way, up to you. An aim, a hypothesis, which you've already done. Background information is going to be you doing some research. It's going to be a slide that tells you what to look for. Equipment, method, results, data, discussion, and conclusion are the things that you're going to need to write for me. Now, if you write them, then on one part of your rubric, you will get a tick at standard. All right? If you don't have everything that's listed on there, so even if you don't have a title, you're out of approaching. Okay, so that's what the rubric says. We'll go through that in a little bit more detail when we have a look at it. So a title for this experiment could be simple as the
Magnesium experiment.
Brilliant. Okay. Now I will assign absolutely 0 marks to that because you just write science experiment. Is that a title? Yeah. Is it a clear title?
Yeah. Sort.
So Magnesium report is the title that you're going to get. So I've just told you the answer to one of the particular things. You notice here, we tried to give you a little bit of an idea. Do you want me to go back?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. If you want me to go back, just tell me. It won't take long. So your hypothesis I got you to do in the lab, and some of you said that it was going to be what? Lighter. Yeah, most of you said it was going to be lighter. Charlie, what did you say? Yeah, okay. Are you actually doing what you're supposed to be doing? Because do you know what gave you away? That Jack was looking solely at your computer screen, not at me. So if you're doing something inappropriate with your computer, you can close it, plug. Because I ain't telling you how to write your assignment. Now, we're going to. So a title, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. You notice up the top there, it probably gives you a title. Magnesium report. Write it down. Excellent. Let's move on. An aim is also not all that important. What were we trying to do? We were trying to burn magnesium and find out if it changed.
Weight.
Is that an aim?
Yes.
There we go. And I'm more than happy for you to use that. Remember, these are not big things. The only thing I'm going to be looking for is it present. And of course, if you write something along the lines of how good a newspaper is an insulator, you're probably not going to do a lot for this experiment because it wasn't what it was about. So if you wanted to write that aim down, I can write it up on the board if you wanted. Our aim was to find out if magnesium got what? Heavier or lighter when heated.
Just for observation.
This is the aim. Yeah, sure. If you want it, you can put in your assignment right now. If you want that as an aim, you want to write your own. It really doesn't matter. Just making sure that we clearly said what we were doing in our experiment. Is there any other way you say you could do this? Find out if the weight changed when we burnt magnesium is another way that I could say that. To find out if magnesium got heavier when I burnt it would be another way. Or to find out if magnesium got lighter when I burnt it is still an aim of the experiment. We've just got to be able to decide or clearly state that in this particular case. Can we run? Okay. Hypothesis. So, who said it was going to get lighter? So, if you notice, it's an if-then statement. So, you could write, if magnesium is heated, then, so there's my if-then, you get what I mean by that? So, if magnesium is heated, then it will get what? What did you say, Katie?
Lighter.
Why?
Magnesium breaks down.
Excellent. Because the magnesium will break down. I told you the example of a kid who told me that when you burn wood, like wood's heavy, when you pick it up off the wood pile, you put it in a thing and all of a sudden it turns to ash and ash is lighter than the wood. Now, funnily enough, actually, if the kid actually took all the ash out of the fire and weighed it, he's actually going to find out that it's going to be
The same.
heavier. Yeah, but I can fully understand why that kid would think that. Now, the other thing with wood, it is going to be a little bit dicey because it depends on how much water's in the wood. So if it's dry firewood, then it should weigh heavier. But if it's wet firewood, then of course, as you burn something, what happens to the water when you burn it?
It evaporates.
It evaporates. And so in that case, you might actually find that it is getting lighter. But in this experiment, magnesium doesn't have any water in it, does it? Okay, and so in that case, we are actually surprised to find out that it did actually get heavier. So, hypothesis. Background information. Now, this is where I really want you to focus because this is going to be one of the things that I'm going to be heavily marking. Okay? So, if you're looking to get like a higher mark, I'm looking for as much detail as you can tell me about magnesium and oxygen and what happens. So, if you just gave me information about magnesium, so you might say that it's got an atomic number of 12. It's got an atomic weight of this, it's in this family of the periodic table, and that for me is that, okay, because that's information that I've given you more or less that you already know. But if you could tell me that 12 means it's got 12 what? Protons, and then of course if you could round the atomic weight and take it away and then tell me how many neutrons are there, are you providing me more detail?
Yes.
So you are moving from the at into the above. Excellent. When we're talking about valency, so remember magnesium, because it's got 2 electrons in its outer shell and gives them away, will it become a minus or a plus? So when it gives electrons away, do we give it a plus or do we give it a minus? We give it a plus, and it would be plus 2 because we're giving how many electrons away? 2. So that information there is, for me, probably above standard. You with me? In the amount of detail that you're giving. Explain what type of bond is occurring and what is happening to the electrons. So that we'll know that it's an ionic bond, but that what's happening to the electrons, I'm going to explain in a minute. But you can see that this is asking you to go away and do a little bit of what? Research. And that's why it's called background information. Explain what you're expecting to happen. Images of their electron configurations. What happens when they become an ion are also things that are going to give you a higher mark in this particular regard. Can I say this? I'd like you to put a big asterisk next to this because the two things that I'm going to be marking exclusively are going to be, just to start, mate, yeah, are going to be this background information. This is where a lot of you are going to be showing me whether you're at, above, or well above in this, and the discussion are the two that I'm going to mark heaviest. And you can see why. Like writing a title is, I would say, not really something that I would expect a grade 10 student to struggle with. Like magnesium experiment standing at the time. The hypothesis you've already done, we just changed it into an if and a then statement. Now, you notice that you gave me here a reason why, and that's what I'm really looking for in your hypothesis too. If you're just going to give me, if magnesium is heated, then it will become lighter, that's not a hypothesis. It's a statement. A hypothesis is why you think it's going to happen. Now, it can be any reason at all. All right, so there's no right or wrong in that particular aspect. That is fine. Okay, because you guys are going to break down, and therefore it's not going to be so great. Explain your hypothesis, and that's what's important. Now, as I said, I will put this on canvas, and I'll show you how to get access to it, and I'll also show you another place where there's lots of hidden goodies. And I'll do that towards the end of the lesson. Can you remind me if I forget? So, then, if we look at the magnesium report, your equipment, you've already got this list. I made you write it. Alright, so there's no research or anything like that, and therefore I'm not going to actually assign any marks or great detail to it because I told you. Okay? We have a tripod, Bunsen burner, heat-proof mat, all that stuff. If you can't remember it, then I would suggest that maybe you go and ask other people in your group if they wrote the equipment list. Alright? The method, I'm also not going to really go into too much detail because remember I gave things. Remember that piece of paper that was there? It's got a little diagram down the bottom. And that had the steps that are on there. So you can quite successfully use that as a method. But because I gave it to you, I'm not going to do what? I'm not going to mark it on, because basically you're just writing some things. Now, this table, you already have, and I would expect to see as part of your results section. You've already got it on that other sheet, and that other sheet, remember, has an example discussion on it you can also read through. If you write that discussion word for word, can I give you a mark? No, because basically it's not your work. But I wrote that discussion, or me and Mr. Wilson wrote that discussion so that you would have a very clear idea for your first practical. So you can reread it, and you can read it, and you can add extra stuff to it, or you can rewrite it, because the content that's in it you're still going to need. So for your results, what are we going to need to put in our results?
Observation. The weight.
Yeah, so you're just going to need to use that table. What else did I get you some of you to do? Take photos. So this is the section where your photos of different things in there, and your observations. Remember, I'm looking for
Descriptive.
Yeah, descriptions, details, what's coming out of it. We opened it up and it was a bit bright. It's not a great thing because what colour was it?
Bright orange.
Yeah, so it was a bright orange light. What else did you observe when you opened up the lid? What came out?
Smoke.
Yeah, a bit of smoke. So they're all observations about what's actually occurring within there. Some people didn't get it to work. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That's an observation. Our experiment did not work, or the magnesium did not burn. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just maybe you needed a little bit more time, or maybe we just need to look at how we're going to redesign this particular thing. Everybody clear about results? Okay, you've already got it, so you can use that table. I'm fine with that. So this is where it's going to become, this is where I'm going to be doing the majority of my marking, how you are going to discuss what happened. Now, I told you that you needed 3 paragraphs, did I not? How big is a paragraph?
However long you want.
However long you want, okay? If you write it in 2 sentences though, please be reflective of the fact that that 2 sentences doesn't show a lot of what?
Information.
Information or detail. If I don't think that your experiment, your report is at least at this, then I'm probably going to meet with you and I'm going to tell you what you need to move it to that point and probably ask you to resubmit. Now, it's not about offending you. It's about making sure that you can walk out of this place at the standard of window. and it might be that it might just be a quick fix, or it might be that you probably could have put this in, that in, and that's going to move you from that approach into that app. Okay, so what is the science behind this experiment? So, basically, we took some magnesium, a strip of metal magnesium, and we burned it. And what we did is we put it in the crucible and we heated it up. And what actually happened is that the oxygen that was inside the crucible, the electrons that were attached to magnesium, basically are given away, and it shrinks down to its next inner shell, which has 8 electrons. Why is it happy it's got 8 electrons?
Because it's an octet.
Because it's a full outer shell, and what do we call that?
An octet.
Now that word is a trick word for me. It's something I'm looking for, okay? Because that's showing me that you are understanding that this has 8 electrons in it, and that octet was a word that I mentioned a lot. So is that going to help you with detail?
Yep.
Octet, yeah, sure. It's O-C-T-et. I love it because it's one of the simplest words I can actually spell. Yeah, and so the 2 electrons that magnesium gives away, oxygen actually accepts. Now, that means that this becomes not an element anymore, these are elements, but becomes a thing called a
Ion.
ion. Now, it has a +2 charge. Can anybody tell me why its charge is +2? What does it have 2 more of?
Electrons.
No, because remember it gave them away. It's got 2 more. Yeah, now remember, it had, as an element, 12 positives and 12 negatives. Electrons are negatives, aren't they? So when it gives these 2 away, it ends up having 12 positive protons and only 10 negative electrons. So overall, it gets a positive charge. Now, I would call this an ion, and I would call it a what ion? A cation ion. Now, if you look at this, I'm trying to give you as much possible information that I know about this. And I want you to change your idea about what a crack report or an assignment is about. It is not a terrible thing that you don't want to do. It is a chance for you to show off to your teacher. Now, some of you might need to do a little bit of research about this, and when we look at the rubric, you're going to see that trip to well above is about doing a little bit of your own research into looking into this. Okay? Now, what will happen to oxygen, though, is that it had 8 protons and 8 electrons, but all of a sudden it gets how many from magnesium? 2. And so now it's got 8 positive protons, but 10 negative electrons. So how many more negative charges does it have?
2 more.
2. And that's why it becomes a -2 ion. What do we call these numbers, starting with V? Valency.
Oh.
So if you go back and have a look, here we go. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong way. We go back and have a look at our background information and say work out the valencies of oxygen and magnesium. And of course, you can look these up; they will be all over the web. So this forms a negative ion, and we call this an anion. And here we come down to what I like to call an axiom or a rule of signs, and that is that opposite signs attract. So what actually happens is this positive ion and this negative ion are attracted to each other, and that's what makes it bond, and we call this bond an ionic bond. Okay? Now, if you're looking for well above, then I'm just going to write a word down here, electrostatic, and that's going to be something that you can have a look into by yourself. Okay? But a positive and a negative bond coming together is what an ionic bond forms. Now remember, the electrons are what? We call it a transfer. Now, it's transferred from magnesium to
Oxygen.
Yeah. So from magnesium to oxygen. So that's the science behind what actually happened, what we did. Alright? That's what happened, and that, I would say, is very highly detailed. You might, for instance, if you're looking for at, you might be telling me that magnesium gives 2 electrons to oxygen, and they change from elements to ions, and they form an ionic compound. Because that's that standard, isn't it? But if you're looking for more, you might tell me why it forms +2, because of course it's got 2 more protons, and therefore it has 2 more positive charges. That for me is moving very quickly from above to well above. Okay, so as much detail as you possibly can remind me. Now, you can ask me certain times, but if you want to give me your prac report, if you get it early and you want me to read through it, I will suggest places you can go for it. But just remember, I won't write it for you. So that's the science that you've got to try and explain for me. Now, what do we name this? Is it magnesium oxygen?
Magnesium oxide.
Excellent. So is that something that shows off how much you understand about what we've been doing?
Yes.
Probably. Do you get what I mean about show off? Okay, so don't write this as quick as you possibly can to get it in. Write it with as much stuff as you possibly can think of. That might mean just having a quick look over some of the notes, some of the things that we've got. If I had done this on the board, I would have put Mg and how many dots? 2, and oxygen and 2 boxes. So that you could put in, couldn't you? Yeah, and so for that, you might just leave a space. You can write it in with a pen. You might even be able to find this diagram on the web, or of course just copied it down from the board and written it there. So I'm going to stop for a while, probably about 3 minutes. So if you want to basically write down any of this, you can. If you want to ask questions, stick your hand up now. Yeah. No, yeah, you can write it out. You can write it, no problem.
Do you care about spelling?
Well, to a certain extent, I will be looking at like the flow and structure of your paragraphs, but I won't mark you down for it. So I might actually say to you, look, there's a different way in which you could have looked at it. Yeah. But then again, of course, if you write this potassium, then yeah, I'm probably going to...
I don't mean like, I don't mean...
Yeah, I know what you mean, but I will be looking at basically how you write in this prac report. If you get it back and then maybe a circle around a sentence, so for instance, like I was looking for a couple of kids' prac reports last year, and I just circled a sentence and just said, look, you may want to just go away and look at how you've written that. It'll probably be more about the structure and scientific language at the beginning. All right? Can I tell you one thing? If it's something that you don't specifically understand, so if there's a word like, I don't know, perioxide or something like that, then probably don't put it in your prac. Yeah, because if you don't understand it, then either do some research about it so you understand what it means, or just leave it out. Okay? Because if you put in some things that are wrong, then you're forcing me to change them up. Okay. So, does anybody want time to write that down?
Yeah.
Okay, go. You have 3 minutes.
I only got it down.
You have to write down.
No? What? What doesn't make sense? Oh, okay.
I need to know what to say. So drawing them.
So you can find there's a pause button.
You need to. What does this mean? What's going on with these two things?
Hey, Shana. I'll take the video if you want to take the photos.
I'm going to go take the photo.
What are these things?
I've got this video. It's still going.
Yeah. We call this
Just listen to some music and play.
we're giving away magnesium.